good, everybody? I am Winston A. Marshall, aka the Swaggy Blurred, and this is my episode 4 review of X-Men 97. Like I said, this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the show and you don't want things to get spoiled, click away now and come back later. I'm not gonna warn your ass again. No, but real talk. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and hit that notification bell so you know whenever I put out new content. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into episode 4 of X-Men 97, which is dual titled called Motendo and Lifedeath Part 1. So the cool thing about this episode that's different than the first 3 is that we actually get a 3/4 episode and a 1/4 episode. Essentially, the first 3/4 is all about Jubilee and Sunspot, and then the last episode is about Storm and Forge. And so we'll touch on both of those super quick. So to start off this episode, we're in the kitchen. Gambit comes up, tries to offer Rogue some coffee, and she's like, oh, the new boss already got me a cup. And Magneto knows how she takes it, 3 sugars. And so Gambit tries to play it off, and he goes, hey, well, if you taking orders, I mean, I'll take a cappuccino. And Magneto hits him with the, well, luckily, I'm the one out here giving orders, which I gotta say, that's pretty fucked up. Like, he essentially was like, not only am I hitting your girl, dog, but you gotta answer to me. So I would not be surprised by the time that this season is over if Gambit says, you know what, fuck all this, mon ami. I'm getting the fuck up out of here. I can't do a Cajun accent. I'm sorry, not sorry. It's just not my strong suit. So yeah, there's that. We find out that apparently it's Jubilee's 18th birthday. And so the whole team is like, it's her birthday. We should do something for her. Magneto goes, absolutely not. She needs to know that the world is a horrible place, so she's training today. They're all like, come on, man. She's 18. I said what I said. So in comes Jubilee, and she's just like, hey, y'all, you know what I really want to do? Just like old times, I want to hit up an arcade. And I'm like, did you have to say like old times, Jubilee? Honestly, because, you know, you don't need to rub in the fact that arcades were a thing of the 90s and it's 2024 and I'm just feeling my mortality slowly creeping in.
Emotional, damn it!
But either way, I thought that was a really cool nod from the writers to just, again, acknowledge that we are visiting the past here and arcades are a thing of the past. And we even get to see a little bit later when we get into the room that she has a Motendo. And I love how they actually did a splitting here. So it's named Motendo, and it has switches of but it has like buttons and whatnot of the original Super Nintendo, but the controller is the original Genesis controller. So they straight up took the 2 biggest systems at the time and they mashed them together. Just another little thing here that you can kind of see there, the Motendo. I also love that they actually have the artwork that I believe is actually from the X-Men Genesis game that was out at the time. So really thought out stuff, and that's one of the things that I love about this team that put the show together. They are paying attention to the details. So to make a comment that, you know, arcades are like old times, to have something like this, and there's other little Easter eggs throughout this episode as we've seen all season long that really just kind of stick to your ribs, man. So either way, you get Jubilee and Sunspot chilling in a room. She's upset that she's got to do the training or whatever, but then the Motendo ends up taking over their bodies. They end up in there fighting randomly. A Sentinel busts its hand through her bedroom window, and they escape from there. And then the Friends Against Humanity start chasing her down, kind of like agents from the Matrix. And that's where we get a follow-up Matrix reference where you see the Friends of Humanity are running after them and they hear a phone booth ring and they go to answer it. So again, this is X-Men 97, but for those that don't remember, the Matrix came out in 99. So any of these little 90s references and whatnot is only further expanding upon the world and the lore and the pop culture sense that this show is bringing to us. Then they get, after answering the phone, they end up in Genosha, and Jubilee goes, yeah, I was trapped here with Storm and Gambit, and they were using the mutants as slaves, and we actually get to see a modern drawn version of the Blob, of Sunfire, I think not Sunfire, I'm forgetting his name, the Japanese hero that is also solar powered and can shoot flame. Anyway, I got to look that up. My apologies for that one. But either way, you end up with a situation where they're being chased by Genoshan soldiers, and they get helped out by this mysterious ally. They just see this kind of cyberpunk looking person that ends up saving them. and they're not quite sure what's kind of going on there. But around that time, when this person tries to save them, Mojo comes in, and you can kind of see him here. And Mojo looks mad skinny. Like, he's normally a fat blob, and we see here that he's looking really good, and he even makes a comment. It's been a horrible quarter three, which is really funny, like, especially when you consider just kind of the state of, the economy and what right now, but specifically just from the standpoint of, for those that are familiar with Mojo, Mojo actually feeds off of ratings. When people tune in, he's this essentially almost like a godlike being that the more that people, and Mojo explains this, the more that people tune into the content that he's putting out, it feeds him, which is, again, another great allegory for social media, for, content creators, for influencers, for this fucking channel. So I just love that, again, there's this nod both to the past and the present and how all of it is kind of intertwined and whatnot. But Mojo essentially explains he's off TV. Nobody's really messing with that right now. Now it's video games. And this is around the time when video games started to make that leap. You had it with Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, going into N64 and PlayStation, and then where we are now with PS5, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, all that kind of stuff, let alone computer gaming, like all of it. It really has taken over a massive chunk and provides a lot to the economy. I mean, billion-dollar industry. You know what I mean? But either way, now that we know we're in a video game, we actually get this really cool kind of situation that pops off, and we get to see what game they have been plunged into.
It's loading. Here we go.
Alt mutant. Go.
So as you can see, it's just a really cool set of moments here. Like from the character select screen to them actually being in the game and kind of seeing everything pixelated, and the fighting of the Sentinels. So for those of you that are old like me, man, then you're probably familiar with that X-Men arcade game. And you even get a reference to it a little bit later. Like you get to see the cabinet, and those were the characters you could play with there. You can see that Cyclops, Colossus, Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, and and Gambit. The only one they're missing, actually, I want to say, is Dazzler. I think she was the last character that's there. My brain is escaping me right now. But either way, it was a really, really cool element that they started laying in there. And I think, like, I can't stress enough the attention to detail. So eventually Jubilee and Sunspot get through, they get through the Night of the Sentinels, they get through the Savage Land, and they ultimately end up on Asteroid M, where they fight Magneto. Roberto almost dies, but they give him an extra life, and that's when you find out that the person that's been helping them right as they're about to be attacked and have to do this all over again, it was old Jubilee. And specifically, this old Jubilee is, there was quote-unquote beta testers, and they made digital replicants of Jubilee and Roberto so that they could test this whole thing out. And so this Jubilee survived, realizing that all the rest of them were getting deleted, and went in there to make sure that she was there to help herself when it all went down and was all said and done, which was, again, really, really cool moment to see that. Very, we've seen the kind of time traveling, helping yourself stuff in the past before. That's a whole thing with Harry Potter, the whole Patronus saving them, etc., etc. So then ultimately, this Jubilee says to her, hey, you got to remember that I know you want to stay young forever, but you can't. You have to grow up, and life comes with wins, loves, loss. You don't know how it's going to end. I know you want to know how it's going to end, just like video games would, just like a book would, just like a TV show would, but you have no idea how it's going to end, and you have to live life. And ironically, this is where we get another like tip to the hat of the lore of X-Men. Our Jubilee says, so Magneto was right. So for those that are unfamiliar with that, let me give you a quick history lesson here. There's a point at which Magneto ends up sacrificing himself to try and save mutants of Genosha, and you see one of the teens that is at Xavier's school show up with a t-shirt that says Magneto was right. And that mentality of we can't live peacefully with humans. War will be the only way that we can do this. All that kind of stuff. The more radical Malcolm X type of approach than Xavier's Martin Luther King approach of how to deal with their situation and the bigotry and whatnot. So for that one little line to be put in there, and it's not now just about mutants and human relations, but Magneto as a father, as a wiser, older mutant, as just an older person, to be like, you always have to be prepared. You can't just sit around and play your video games and hide in the house and make everything all sugars and sugars and raindrops. And it reminds me, honestly, again, being black in America, at a young age, my parents had to have a conversation with me about how to deal with cops, how to deal with racism, and that it's going to come at me one way or the other, and how to process all of that. So this is essentially what Jubilee is saying. She's like, I guess Magneto was right. I have to live life and I got to deal with the ups and downs that comes with it, which I thought was cool. But that's when you get Mojo being like, you know what? Screw you. I'm the final boss. You're not going to ruin my ratings. I need this to live. And that's when you get this really awesome anime reference of you have a Naruto Boruto. For those that are Naruto Boruto fans, they do a combined Rasengan together. And what Jubilee learns, our Jubilee, is that the older one has learned a bunch of techniques. Everything from being able to use her powers to skate around, to being able to do better landings, to making these kind of spiral attacks here. And collectively, they put their powers together, and young Jubilee is the one that ends up using this final attack against Mojo. And again, for those that are big fans of Boruto, you're familiar with Boruto making a Rasengan and Naruto adding his chakra to it to make an even more powerful attack to take down the big bad. So this was just a really great nod to me as a massive anime nerd, that like the people making the show are paying attention to shit happening and bringing it in and making an awesome full story. So after defeating Mojo, they get out, and Robbie and Jubilee finally share a kiss. There was a lot of talks of, the lovebirds, all that, and they finally are together now, and I thought that was a really, really great moment. So then our next episode is Lifedeath Part 1. This is a much shorter episode, and it's Storm now gone off with Forge, and they're working to try and get her powers back. And we get to see little Easter eggs here of like him with X-Force. And you can see here, if you remember the episode, that one of the few episodes we get with Iceman, I think it's the only one, maybe two, they do fight X-Force, which is full of the mutants you see here: Quicksilver, Havoc, Polaris, Wolfsbane, Multiple Man, and I want to say that's Tiny. I can't remember his name to save my life, but that's okay. That was a really fun episode there that we got to see that. So it's a nice little Easter egg back to the previous series here. And you have a lot of conversations about Forge's powers, what they actually do, the idea for him to come up with things and his brain processing things in a different way than other people, so he can really create whatever he puts his mind to. He just needs the resources. But Storm just talks about, I miss being able to ride the winds and what that meant to me. And so they go for a horse ride. They have a fun little race there. And as they get back, Forge is like, okay, let me finish the machine. Let's give it a shot. Let's see if we can't get your powers back. And so after being exposed to this machine, she goes out and she calls for the winds, and nothing comes. And you get a really sad moment of saying, please, winds, like, I need you. And again, this horrible just mentality for poor Storm of how she's just had the essence of who she is just robbed from her. And it's just bringing further and further despair. And so for anybody that has gone through, a career change, anybody that's had to change their direction in life with family or moving to a new location, if there's a part of you that's missing, and we kind of get a little bit of that, if I pull back up this photo of Forge here, we know that Forge is missing both his leg and his hand. He lost in the Vietnam War. This idea of having to adapt to something new, and sometimes you can and you handle it well, and sometimes you can't, but a part of you is missing. And that's what we keep coming back to with Storm, is this major part of her is missing. But then ultimately, there's a point at which Storm asks the question, why are you so hell-bent on fixing me, though? Like, what are you getting out of this? And that's when Forge starts to open up, and he goes, well, I got out of the war, and I was coming up with these ideas, but I didn't have the resources, so the government approached me. And Storm goes, wait a minute, you know damn well you ain't never supposed to trust Washington, which I gotta say, I don't know if that was more mutant or more black for her to be like, you trust the government, you motherfucker. So either way, They have a bit of a fight, and Forge admits to Storm, like, look, I'm doing it to atone, but I'm also doing it because I love you. And Storm ain't having that shit. She slaps the hell out of this man and goes, you're not going to use me as some sort of thing to make you feel better. And she takes off, only to be brought back in. And that's where we see this horrible demonic creature known as the Adversary, who comes in and knocks Forge out, but then takes Storm and goes, you know, I feed off of misery, and yours is so delicious. I'll never let this meal escape. And that's where we get to the end of the episode, the end of this part 1 of Life Death, man. So I gotta say, watching this is 2 weeks in a row that I'm going to give a 5 to these episodes, man. And that's mainly because with this particular episode, not only, again, all the little Easter eggs, all the homages, all of that, I think there was a lot of really beautiful elements, and we're getting that every single episode. So all the folks that are like, man, it was never this deep when I watched it as a kid, you need to go rewatch the original series. But I love the fact that in 97, they take these moments to explore what it means to have, you know, a loss of yourself. They take these moments to, like, teach the younger you got to go out and you have to live life. I think that's also a nod to a lot of the younger generation right now. There's a lot of talk about, like, with Gen Z. I know there was a study that came out that said that a large majority of Gen Z people prefer first dates to be digital. I get it. A lot of the reasoning for that is, like, you know, I want to be more efficient, all that kind of stuff. But there's something about living life. So you're not just in your phone or on apps, but you're interacting with people. You're going out with people, things like that. You're dealing with the real world. And I think that was really what Jubilee's episode is about, is accepting getting older, accepting your responsibilities, and being in the real world. And I love talking about that. And then with Storm, on the flip side, you're now dealing with one of the older X-Men, the idea of potentially having to let go and what that means. Now, we got to get to part 2 and see if she ultimately defeats Adversary and gets her powers back. But again, this is pulling a character and a storyline directly out of the comics and involving it with the Adversary, which is really cool. This is something that has plagued Forge, because Forge was supposed to be a shaman based off of his family, and he ultimately decides not to. He runs off to the army and does everything that he does. So I really just love, again, the attention to detail to the stories that are directly tied to the X-Men, putting your own spin on it for this particular medium, and then able to bring in life lessons and pop culture all throughout. So that's why I got to give this one in particular a 5. I even love breaking the traditional, we're just going to do one episode in it and give me 2 little nuggets. Love that. Thought that was cool. But what do you think, man? Go in the comments right now. Let me know what you thought about this particular episode and what you're thinking about the season so far. I know we got 10 episodes, so we're 1 away from the halfway mark. It's going to be a sad day when this season is over, but it's our first part 2, two-parter, our first to be continued, if you will. Didn't get to see that. I do miss having those to be continued to flash up. But I genuinely want to know how you're feeling about this and where this episode ranks amongst the 4 that are out so far. And again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Throw some love in there. Throw a like on this and hit that notification bell so you know what's going on. And come on back, man. I got more and more content I'm putting up on the channel on the regular. You can also find me over the Christian Harloff channel for Capes and Cows. And if you are watching this by now, then you may not have seen, if you follow me on social media, please do that at the Swaggy Blurred, that on the 16th, there will be a Blurds in the Hood show. For those that know me from Blurds in the Hood, there will be more information out, so please check on social media about what that specifically is. I don't want to give everything away right now, but I do want to go ahead and advertise that. But yeah, we will see you on the 16th, and come on back next week as we cover episode 5 of X-Men 97. So with that, I'm gonna get the hell up out of here. I will see y'all next time, man. Peace.